You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. A lot of the times the criticism comes in the places that we do need to hear it. But if we're not told it in the right way, how can we really receive it? What we know is true and what is for our highest good, and that is actually helpful for us. If we can allow ourselves to think about and consider those things and turn them around for our best, that is criticism we need. Hi there, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. I'm Felicia, here to just share a little bit of something that I've been going through, thinking about this week, to hopefully that it relates to you, or at least a bit of you. One of the reasons that I started this podcast is because I think so much of the time we feel like we're alone going through what we're experiencing or what we're feeling. And when we find out that somebody else faces those same things or thinks about the same things or has something, even if it's not the exact same thing, but in some way it relates to you, it just helps you remember that you're not alone. So that's what I'm here doing. And today I have an interesting topic for us. And that topic is a word that is not a friendly word. Well, at least it's not always usually well received, and it is criticism. I'm going to be talking about this a little bit later on in the episode, but it is a word that kind of has come up for me quite a bit today, and I've been thinking about giving and receiving criticism and personally why I have some walls that go up for me, and like what makes me so resistant to criticism. So going to be diving into that a little bit later in today's episode. But first, I kind of just wanted to share a little bit about what's been going on this week. This past week, I have just been working my tail off to get ready to launch the A Bit From Within website. So you guys, I'm super excited for this because when I first had the idea for A Bit From Within, I went and bought the domain and I did start a blog and an Instagram to go with this whole idea of A Bit From Within. And honestly, it didn't really go anywhere at first. As a lot of you guys know, it wasn't really until the pandemic hit and things shut down and the yoga studio closed that I decided to start the Patreon page A Bit From Within. And that's when the idea actually started to more fully form, because I wanted to be able to connect with people who are going to support my work as a yoga teacher and as a mindfulness teacher. And so that's why I started the Patreon, so that I could teach yoga classes. I could hold space for guided meditations. I always had people in class at the studio say, "Oh, part of the reason I come to class is just to hear your voice," which I always thought was kind of funny, but I thought that guided meditations would be a great way to continue to have something to offer that would be meaningful to people. And honestly, back then, it seemed like we all needed that chance to, at least if we weren't comfortable practicing yoga in our homes, at least we could give ourselves this opportunity to put on a guided meditation, sit down, breathe, and hold space for ourselves. And then, of course, the thing that I'm super interested in is the astrology and the lunar guides. So I thought I might as well kind of make a thing of this, kind of throw this in there. I'm not even sure if all the Patreon members love it. Are you guys loving it? I'm not even sure. That is one of the things that I miss the most about actually seeing and interacting with people in person, is you get to kind of get a vibe for how it's resonating with people. But with having it all online, it's up to the people receiving it to let me know how they're resonating with it. But all of this time, I've really stuck with this idea of, does it make sense to me? Is this something that I want to be participating in? Do I want to be teaching this? Do I want to be talking about this? And that's kind of what created this whole idea. And so, during this entire time, I have not had my domain up, because that's how long it had been since the A Bit From Within. I think the domain probably expired like a month and a half or two before the pandemic hit. And so I didn't have a website this whole time. And I knew it was something that I needed to do. And so finally I guess it was around Thanksgiving that the stars kind of aligned, and I found an amazing website designer who was able to help me bring this idea for this website into life. And so I thought that we should launch it at this new moon. It took us a couple months to get all of the pieces in place for it to kind of come to life. And it's really cool, you guys. The website, which will be released on Thursday if you're listening to this, so just a couple more days, bitfromwithin.com. It has yoga classes that you can just purchase individually. So if you're not sure that you actually want to become a Bit From Within member, but you know that you really want to practice a yoga class, or, patron members, if you've taken a class but you want to recommend just one specific practice to somebody else, there's some specific yoga practices. Now, not every class that I post on the Patreon, because Patreon members get a new class every week, not every class goes up on the website. It's just the ones that I think have a better reception, or a little bit more broad and appealing to the general public. But so I've got 4 yoga classes on there right now, and then 3 guided meditations. And then what I've been working kind of tirelessly on are these standalone full moon and new moon guides. So they're 10 pages and they can be used at any time of the year. So what I usually do for the Patreon is, right now I'm getting ready to release a new moon guide specifically for this February, for new moon in Aquarius. And I talk about, the new moon in Aquarius, and I release a ritual and include some other self-care things about, self-care during the new moon and self-care during an air sign, which is Aquarius. And so it's very specific for that. But for these, I wanted them to be useful to anyone, whether you have done a lot of work with full or new moons, or whether you were just starting out. You're like, what does it even mean to work with the lunar cycle? That is what these guides are for. So the new moon guide, it's 10 pages all about how do you work with the new moon energy? What does that even mean? So it's more of a deep dive specifically into just what does it even mean to work with the lunar cycle? And so it kind of goes into 2 F's. So the new moon is that first 15 days of the lunar cycle leading up till the full moon. And that guide is really about manifestation, intention setting. How do you use it to create momentum for new beginnings? That sort of thing. And then the full moon guide is a standalone 10-page also, all about how do you use that full moon energy, and how do you pace yourself as the moon wanes down back into the darkness? So together they're kind of like this 20-page complete kind of set. And then I've included the moon tracker on the website as well. So I'm just really excited that for the chance that this can help more people. Hopefully it lands in the hands of people who are craving this kind of information and want more, and who are excited to use it. So I'm excited about that. And then also each of the podcast I'm doing, there's going to be an associated blog post with it, so that I can just share more of my heart and what's been going on. And hopefully it'll just be, I'm not really sure what the reception is going to be like. I just know that I'm really proud of it. My website designer, Monica, and we were talking today, just kind of putting the final details on everything. And I just had to ask her, I'm like, are you excited for this? Does it look as good as I think it does? And we were both like, I think so. I think this looks so good. And I am just going to be so thrilled to take that coming soon page off of it and share the website with all of you. It's definitely been a labor of love and fun. And when we kind of set out to be able to launch this, I had no idea that we'd be launching it in the middle of Mercury retrograde. So I honestly didn't even think about it until 2 days. Actually, I think I was recording the podcast talking about Mercury retrograde coming in, realizing, oh no. If you guys are on TikTok, it's like that song. It's like, oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 no. That's how I felt a little bit. But I thought about it a lot, and I thought, should I push this off until the following new moon? But I feel like I've waited, and I don't want to wait. And I know I could wait until, the 21st, until after this Mercury retrograde is over. But, in some ways, I do feel like this is kind of like the perfect kind of launch for Mercury retrograde, because it is not a brand new business officially. Like this was already created, and now it's the redo of that, right? It's the revamping, the redesigned, the reimagined, a bit from within. And so I think that energy kind of goes well with the Mercury retrograde. In fact, I've been really trying to think about Mercury retrograde in terms of, how to focus on like the positive side effects of it, because, you guys know it gets such a bad rep. And I tell you what, I've had quite a few more, Mercury and retrograde kind of moments with more things being deleted or just disappearing, and communication kind of being wacky. My phone's been acting crazy. But there's that, and that's super frustrating. But then there's all these other great opportunities. Like last week, what was happening? Dave had a call. He started doing a full-time like filmmakers class where he gets to be in this kind of elite level group of different videographers, and then they kind of work together to improve their skills. And so he was on a call, and so I was downstairs, unable to be in my work office, so I had to figure out something else to do. You guys know me, I'm kind of always on the go, trying to redo something. And I just had this sudden, overwhelming urge. I had not originally planned this, but I was like, you know what? What's not working is my organization in the kitchen. Like I had certain pots and pans, where I had the cups and the bowls and the spices, and like where I put all of our Tupperware. Tupperware is like one of the hardest things to organize. It's always so funny when, like, literally I've been there before in my life where like you like just like put something in the cabinet, shut the cabinet really fast because you're like, oh, I don't want this all to fall apart. And so how I store my Tupperware is I store everything with the lid right on the container, and then I just stack the containers, because in my experience, if you separate the lid from the container, it's just a bigger chance of the two being ripped away and never seeing each other again. And then you just have like two that actually work, and then the rest of them are just these miscellaneous items. And I hate that. So I always like put them together as a unit, stack them. And what had been happening like over the past couple months is that the cabinet that we had all the Tupperware in is also the same cabinet that we have like our olive oils and vinegars and salt and pepper, and not all the spices, but like probably just salt and pepper. And it started just to it was getting a little out of control. And so I was thinking, you know what? It's time. Like, I need to just redo this. How could I redo this? And so I sat down for a second, kind of sketched it out. And then suddenly it was like, this is where I either feel like Mercury retrograde, and also this was during the full moon side of things, where it's really good during the full moon to tie up loose ends, and you can really, things can kind of be reworked in a way that is a little bit easier, like where you don't have to try so hard. And I feel like this little kitchen thing was like testimony to that, because within an hour I had reorganized the kitchen, the coffee nook, I removed all the water bottles to this place, one of our underneath cabinets that has like a pull out, works so much better. Moved the Tupperware over, like have way more space for the spices and the oils and vinegars. And then I even did the pantry as well. So when Dave got off his call, I was like, welcome to your new kitchen. I had to give him a new tour of everything. And it all just flowed so well. Like it was like one cabinet led to the next idea, and I was amazed at how easily it worked and how much more useful it is. And I love that idea of really using the Mercury retrograde for that kind of momentum where you're just like, what's not working that could be working better? What in my life needs to be looked at a little bit differently? And you don't have to do your whole kitchen, like that kind of just flowed together, but it could just be one drawer or one closet or one item, right? Like just if you're looking at your closet, you could just be like, I'm just going to look at my t-shirts and see which ones I need to get rid of. All of that works so well. And then another example of like positive Mercury retrograde, Dave today, Dave is a huge Pokemon collector. He loves Pokemon and Pokemon cards specifically. And he decided to start like looking through some of the older ones, and he ended up finding like this kind of valuable card, like not super valuable. I think he said it was like more than $20 worth of value card that was like shuffled in with all of the other kind of dud cards. And he ended up kind of redoing all of it, kind of regathering them, bringing them all together. And I told him like, this is a great Mercury in retrograde thing to do. Like just look at your collection, redo it, reorganize it, re-envision how it's working for you. And it really worked out in his favor. And you can just tell that he was in a good place to do that. And I could tell that his energy was lightened from doing that too. So that was awesome. So Mercury retrograde gets a bad rap, but it's not always a bad thing. If you can be patient through the stuff that's not working well. So continuing to kind of speak about this Mercury retrograde. All right, you guys. So while we're on this topic of the Mercury retrograde, let's transition into the astro check-in for the week. So we are still in the middle of this Mercury retrograde. We've got 2 more weeks to go. We are, kind of finishing up this full moon cycle right now. We've got a couple days until the new moon, which is on Thursday, the 11th. And that's going to be new moon in Aquarius. So what's interesting, you guys, I mentioned this last week, but seriously, this is crazy. We have 6 planets in astrology in Aquarius. I mean, we've got the sun in Aquarius, we've got moon in Aquarius, Venus and Mercury are in Aquarius, and then Saturn and Jupiter. That is a lot of energy happening in Aquarius right now. And just a reminder, Aquarius, an air sign. Aquarius can be a little bit more aloof than other signs. It's very intellectual, head in the clouds, extremely innovative. I mean, talk about, what I was just saying with the Mercury in retrograde in Aquarius, this idea of like looking at things differently. That is so this Aquarius energy where it's like reinventing things or inventing things for the first time. Aquarius wants everything to be new and original and individualized. Like it doesn't want to be like anybody else. It wants to have its own unique identity. And so that can really work well. And you might be feeling some of that. And I was thinking about this with Venus in Aquarius for this Valentine's Day, which is next Sunday, believe it or not, or this coming Sunday, I should say. But so with Venus is kind of like the planet that symbolizes romance and relationships and love. And it's not like the sun, where like the sun is always in Aquarius during Valentine's Day. Venus could be anywhere. Last year it was in Aries. The year before that it was in Capricorn. And this year it's in Aquarius. And so this Valentine's Day, it might have a little bit of a different flair to it. Like this may not be the most romantic, passionate Valentine's Day. It may be a really good Valentine's Day to focus on love for yourself, love for your community, love for your friends, love for your social networks. Not that you can't like love the person you're in a relationship with if you are, or like have that element of more romantic love, but Aquarius, like especially Venus in Aquarius, like it doesn't have that same kind of like passionate vibe. Like it could be a little bit more detached. It's more analytical. So But it is really awesome. Like Aquarius is a really great connector of like friendships, which is why I mentioned like it might be a good time to just like get on I don't know, a Zoom chat with your friends or connect with people out, just not just focus on like the love in the relationship, but like love that's bigger than that. And Valentine's Day has morphed so much over the years anyways. A lot of people know that it's just kind of, well, I shouldn't say no. A lot of people believe that it's just kind of a Hallmark holiday and they don't, really think of it the way that I always thought people did when I was in like middle school and high school. I always thought like, oh, someday I'll be somebody's Valentine and someday like you'll go out for dinner or you'll get chocolates or you'll get this or that. And I've never had that experience on Valentine's Day. I don't know about you guys. Actually, Dave usually does get me like a little bouquet of flowers, like my favorite kind of like just kind of small bouquets that are just full of random flowers. Those are my favorites. He's been really good about getting me those every Valentine's Day. One thing that I love about Valentine's Day being with Dave is that it is our like half anniversary is the day before that. So our anniversary is August 13th. And so half of that would be February 13th. So I kind of love that, like so we'll be together 4.5 years this Valentine's Day, which is so crazy to me. It is quite an accomplishment for us that we've made it this far. And honestly, I actually should say like it's an accomplishment for me. It takes a lot of effort to be in a relationship and to grow in a relationship. And this is the longest relationship that I've ever been in. So it is quite a big milestone for me. So kind of cool. Anyway, all that being said, there's a little bit of a sneak peek into this, what's happening astrologically. And, you guys, with this new moon, this is going to be one that I think needs a little bit of that slower momentum to it. So, you guys know new moon, new beginning, intention setting, manifestation. But it can also be a time for seeking clarity, for really wanting to set your intentions to know what the right answer is, to know what you want to manifest. So there's nothing wrong with that, like a slightly more yin look at intention setting and manifestation. Like it's okay to rest. It's okay to relax. It is okay to let yourself kind of be that blank canvas, because after that, we're going to start gaining more and more light during the as we move back again towards a full moon. And that is going to be a time of inspiration and momentum. So lots of cool stuff happening there. All right, you guys, that's it for the Astro Check-In. Let's go ahead and finally, we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back and dive into our topic today, which is criticism. Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you guys and share that I am probably not a great person at receiving criticism. Are you? Maybe you are. It's strange because I actually really appreciate good, constructive criticism. I like to know what I could be doing better, and it's really important to me. But I'm extremely self-critical, and maybe that's part of the reason why it's really hard for me is because I'm already so hard on myself that criticism, especially done in the wrong way, it probably doesn't help either that I'm words of affirmation is my love language, and so words of criticism feels like the antithesis of that and like not good. So it can be like extra hurtful for me, especially, if somebody is kind of casually throwing things at you that you've either thought through or are afraid that you are, or all of that. So criticism is a tough one. And I'm trying to be really honest with myself admitting that because, how all of this came up is that earlier today, Dave, so I told you guys earlier that he's in this like cool filmmaker group. And so, on the forum or something, he had shared one of our videos and it got critiqued and just by another member of the group. And it was, let's just say I was surprised at some of the criticism that came back. To me, it seemed there were some good points, but they seemed especially delivered in a harsh way. And there was really no positive or like, what are you doing right? Now, I know that there's a lot of, obviously this is a touchy subject. So I apologize in advance if you're like getting triggered at all. I hope that you're not. Have you guys ever heard of the feedback sandwich? You know, where it's like you say one positive thing and then in the middle's the negative thing and then you put, the positive thing on the other side of it. And a feedback sandwich done like wrong or done in a way that is forced really sucks. Like it sucks when you're on the receiving side of criticism and somebody's like, trying to pick any old random good thing to try to squeeze in like the negative thing and then just packages it kind of nicely for you. But that's a thing. I feel like we kind of do instinctively know, what somebody's honesty is with what the criticism is. And I feel like that's where I try to be very, very intentional when I give criticism to people, to other people. I try to be as authentic as possible and as genuine as possible. I kind of let that be what guides my criticism. Now, that is obviously, what I'm talking about is like when I'm going to be giving feedback to one of my teammates for my photography, or if I'm going to sit down and talk to, Dave about a film or something like that. Those are places in like a work example where you can be a lot more intentional. Or if somebody asks you like, hey, can you look at my website? Or hey, can you, do this? Like a friend asks that. You're sitting down with your whole heart invested into saying, I'm going to look at this for them and I'm going to tell them my honest opinion and let them know what I'm saying that they may not be saying. That's kind of my viewpoint. And it might come out a little bit like a feedback sandwich. I don't love that. Again, I don't love that term because I feel like that tends to fall more towards like fake. But I do think it's important to include what is working right when you give constructive criticism, or at least including what the potential there is. I feel like if all you do is focus on what is wrong, you're not really doing the person that you're talking to any favors, unless truly there's nothing that they've done right, which I think is usually the case, right? Like most of the times there's something that's going right when you're talking about these kind of things, at least creative things. But I suppose where this kind of gets tricky is, you have intentional feedback. I guess that is also in the category of like solicited feedback where, that there's going to be a back and forth. Like, somebody's giving you work, you're going to give feedback on it, or you've thrown your hat in the ring, or you've approached a friend like, hey, or they've approached you, hey, can you look at this for me and give me some information or your insight on that? That would be solicited feedback. And then there's unsolicited criticism, right? Where nobody asked you and you're just giving your opinion. And this is where it starts to get really murky, right? And this is probably where I do probably a pretty crappy job sometimes, because You guys know I have that Virgo rising in me. I am a little bit judgmental. Virgos are known for always having their eye on like what's good, what's bad, what can be done better. Highly, highly critical. And so I've got that going on inside of me a lot of the time. And most of the time it's for myself, but also the people closest to me can also sometimes see that side of me quite a bit too. And I will be the first to admit that sometimes I do a really crappy job of that because I'm either feeling defensive or I'm frustrated or I'm feeling like things are out of my control or I'm just fed up and resentful and I haven't been a good communicator about what I need. And so it comes out really bad. So I'm definitely not perfect, but I feel like I try to be really, really good at solicited, criticism towards when I'm giving it to other people. Now, taking solicited feedback is probably a little bit of a different story. And the truth for me there, if I'm being honest, is that I do not put myself in a position very often for receiving solicited feedback. I don't put myself in a position very often to receive that. In fact, I'm trying to like think. I unlike Dave, I don't belong to any, like photography groups where I'm going to throw my name out there and try to get that criticism from my peers. And this is where I do feel like I need to take a closer look at like what's going on in my heart and why am I so protective and not good at taking criticism. Because, just really speaking honestly, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. I don't want to hear what I feel like a lot of people have to say. I feel like who I would solicit feedback from, that would have to be people that I highly respect. So like anybody on my team, if any of them had feedback for me on my pictures, I would love to hear that. My clients, obviously people I'm working for, I want to know what they think. Same thing with A Bit From Within. If anyone had criticism, I would want, like, especially the people who are patron members, I would want you to feel like you could tell me. Like, if anyone of you listening has criticism on this podcast, I would genuinely want to know that, because those are people that are actually interacting with me. But, Sally Joe, photographer who takes wedding pictures over in Westminster, who is on Facebook, do I really want to know what she thinks of my pictures? No, I don't. I don't know her. I don't know who she is. And that's a big thing that I was just talking to Dave about, because we're going back and forth on this criticism conversation. I was telling him one thing that's really important for me is the answer to the question, who is this person who's giving me this criticism? And more importantly, do they have my best interest at heart? And sure, if you saw a picture online and it just said, can you critique this photograph? No context about that person. Nothing of their journey. Nothing of how they took that photograph. So sure, if I put that out there, I'd be throwing myself into this vulnerable circle for any of that. But the reason that I don't want that feedback is because I would rather talk to people who have that context. Or if I was going to go to, a general photographer for somebody like that, I would be going to the people that I have the utmost respect for, people that I have studied under, people whose work I absolutely love everything they do, people who, in the classes that I've taken with them, everything that they say makes perfect sense to me and is something that I'm like, yes, that is why it works. Oh, yes, that I totally understand where you're coming from. Or, oh, I can see what you're talking about. that is whose criticism I want. I don't want general criticism from random people, because I don't know if I really do have faith that those people's interests would be in the best place for me. And maybe that sounds a little cynical to say that, but I think in the world of criticism, we do have the right to be a little bit self-protective, because there are people who are willing to give their own criticism to make their own egos feel better. And I feel like I see this all the time with photography, with yoga, with astrology, with honestly, with anything, even like realtors, just in these highly competitive, places, even like working retail and like working positions, and when you're up for a promotion with people are so willing to tear others down. I think most of the time it's probably pretty subconscious, but it does happen because they're afraid. They're threatened by something that person has to offer, or they think that subconsciously that another person doing well means they're not doing as well. And I think for me, it's really important for me to be in the conversation, in criticism conversations with people who genuinely want everyone to succeed. From people who genuinely want me to succeed, and who genuinely know more of what has gotten me to where I'm at. And that's another part of, for me as a leader, when I'm giving criticism or constructive critique or feedback, I really think the most important thing you can do in that situation is fully meet somebody as well as you can on the level that's appropriate for them. So you wouldn't give somebody who is just starting out the same level of or thoughts on their work that you would give somebody who's out of this world doing it really well, right? You're going to be a lot more nuanced. You're going to be a lot pickier with somebody who's a professional at what they're being critiqued for, as opposed to somebody just moving out of the gates. I also think that there's a lot of self-awareness required when you're being the critiquer, of kind of knowing, okay, is this something that they can change? Is this just my opinion on the subject, especially when it comes to creative things, right? Is this just my opinion? And if so, kind of owning that fact that when you give the criticism of, this is my perspective, this is what I would see differently, but not degrading that person for how they did it, because it could simply just be a difference of opinion, a difference of approach, a difference of style. Because there's a huge difference between somebody who has done something unintentionally because they didn't know better, than to somebody who's put a lot of thought into telling a story a certain way. And, I'm really thinking of the lens of through the feedback that Dave got on this video. It wasn't even bad feedback, but it really riled me up because I felt like it was done haphazardly. Like, one of the things that was mentioned wasn't even true. Like the first thing she pointed out wasn't even true. She had said like, oh, there's no this or that in the first 1 minute. And I'm like, it's literally like the third frame. Like, are you kidding me? And that immediately sets me on the defensive, because again, I go back to that question of like, should I even be listening to this person's criticism if they can't even take the effort to like be thoughtful and be truthful about what they're criticizing? And, that kind of brings me to my third, I swear there's three. I'll summarize them up here. But my last question, I think that's really important when you're getting any kind of either solicited or unsolicited feedback, is remembering that not everything that somebody is going to tell you or throw at you is true. And that's probably the most powerful thing that you can ask yourself when you've received a piece of criticism is this true? So if somebody has said to you like, hey, you failed at storytelling because such and such didn't happen. well, is that true? Like in this case, like, no, that's not true. Like that did happen. And so that entire piece of criticism goes out the window. And that's why you have to be careful when you're sharing feedback with people too, because the more times that person can answer like, no, that is not true, the less credibility you have, the less they're going to listen to anything that you might have to say that could be honest. And that's why the feedback sandwich also can be so bad when you're being a liar or you're being fake. Because if you tell somebody something that they're doing well, but you do it fakely or you're not genuine about it, you're not being sincere, why are they going to believe the bad thing that you're trying to present to them if you're not being genuine about the good thing you're sharing to them? So, but that also applies with the kind of criticism that can come across really rude. Like if somebody's like, you're a jerk or your hair sucks, or, things that are, I don't know, a little bit just more rude. You always have the ability to say, is that true? Because if it's not true, then you can throw that right out the window. You don't have to take that. You don't have to believe that. And that is one of the most important things that every single one of us, especially those of us who struggle with self-esteem or with self-love or wondering if you're enough, you have to ask yourself, am I believing things that other people said about me that simply aren't true? Like if, for example, if somebody was calling you a pink elephant and without any shadow of a doubt that you are not a pink elephant, then you let that roll right off of you. But when we are a little bit more vulnerable and, like, for example, one of the things that I am very defensive about is being wrong. I know that might sound kind of funny, but I really, really put a lot of thought into making decisions. And Dave and I were talking about this also the other day because we were supposed to go visit one of my dear friends who is pregnant, and we were going to do a maternity session for her. She lives over on the other side of the Continental Divide, so we're going to go on a little trip this weekend. But there was a ton of snow coming in the overpass, and we kind of just had to make the call, like, are we going to do this or not? And so I really wrestled with this decision. And I was going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And ultimately we decided not to chance it in the snow. And I was going back and forth, and Dave was like, is there a reason that you're being so indecisive about this? And I was like, yes, because somewhere in my mind, there is a right decision and a wrong decision. So if I decide to stay home and there's a huge snowstorm, then that's the right decision, because it would have been horrible to get there and back, and anything could have happened to us and we would have been in danger. But if we stay home and there's no snow and it's fine, then I made the wrong decision because I wasn't able to be there for my friend, and I made the wrong decision. Or if we, decided to go and the snow was too bad and we were in danger, or like crashed or got in a car accident or got stuck in the snow, something happened, that would be the wrong decision to me. And so that's kind of, I guess, what I'm talking about with, like, I need to be right. Like, another example would be like, did I order the right rug for the living room? Because there's no returning of it and it was an investment. And if I don't like it anymore, then that was the wrong decision. And that's a very big deal to me. Like, I hold myself very with a ton of criticism around things like that. So going back to this idea of, like, if you're vulnerable to, being very critical with yourself, you are a person who resonates with that right or wrong thing. If you struggle with self-esteem and you feel like you're not good enough, and you have people coming at you who are, like, harsh with you and who are saying, things that somewhere deep inside of you that you are wrestling with. Like if somebody, if Dave challenges me about that rug, if he's like, this rug doesn't match anything and we can't find any wood to match with it, and now we have this expensive rug that might as well just be thrown in the trash, I would feel devastated, because I'm already so afraid of being wrong that that's not a criticism that I can easily take, right? It's just not. And that, I think, is part of the reason why criticism is hard for me, because I'm pretty self-critical as it is. I put a lot of effort into thinking through why I do what I do and into executing it. And it's hard. It's hard. So for all of those of you out there who resonate with that too, just remember, maybe even take that moment and think about it. Like, what are some of those things that are still open wounds for you? Maybe it was an employer who let you go, or an opportunity that somebody declined to work with you, and it's just sat with you and you've, really taken it personally. Maybe you have to ask yourself, was that true? And be willing to own up to the parts that are true, and to also be willing to let go of the stuff that just plain wasn't true. I can't help but think of a few years ago, I lost a very dear friend. She didn't die, but our friendship ended over a critical conversation. And it was extremely painful because we had been working together. She had been working with me in my business for pretty much since the beginning. Since she was one of my first second shooters that I ever worked with. And I trained her in wedding photography and taught her everything that I knew. And we, stayed overnight on trips. She came to Texas with me. We were great, great friends. Well, at that point in running my business, I was not practiced at giving constructive criticism. I really erred more on the side of talking and focusing on more of what was going right and trying to play to somebody's strengths. And so I hadn't been very honest with her about some of the things that were not working for me as the person whose business it was. The things that I needed out of her when she was shooting with me. And so I started working with a business coach and started, expanding my idea of having a team and growing. And I was building a lot more traction, and I was taking things to a new level. And I was very stressed about how to talk to her about what wasn't working well, because I had edited a couple of her weddings where I was just like, oh, this is not working right now. I don't have as good of quality as I need that I promised to my clients. And it's a very big deal to me. You guys know that I have a very high bar of what I think is excellent and what I promise my clients. And so I had sat down with her, and my whole heart was on the line. I tried to be as honest and genuine as possible, and just kind of had to let her know, hey, I think that I have to start going in a different direction with some of my clientele, because the bar for excellence needs to be a little bit higher. I needed somebody for certain weddings that had a lot more attention to detail. And I was trying to be pretty honest with her about the fact that I think that she excelled in other areas that played to a more laid back client of mine. Some of my clients are a little bit more that way. And some of my clients are very, very picky. And she took it very, very, very personally. And she could only hear the bad part about what I was saying, and it deeply hurt her. And it was very confusing for me because I didn't understand how she couldn't see how nice I was being in a way. I was really trying to be honest about the fact that I needed to start hiring other photographers, for the fact that I just need different people's skill sets to be employed for different kind of wedding situations. And there's part of it where like I just had to own up to the fact that like I probably didn't use some of the right words. When I was feeling extremely scared to have the conversation at all, and I probably was in a little bit of fight or flight myself, and I probably didn't choose my words as carefully as I meant to. And those probably are what stuck with her and changed the conversation in her mind. And we shot another wedding together after this conversation. We didn't talk for a little bit. She went on a vacation. She came back. She shot a wedding with me. It went so well. Like that was like the best work that she ever did for me. And then she left. She went on another vacation and then just stonewalled me. And I just couldn't, like, after that, like, our friendship just broke. It broke apart and we never recovered from that. And it's something that's really, really stuck with me because I never want to be in a position like that again where I never meant to hurt her, and I never meant to not be able to be honest about what I needed. Like I need that level of back and forth. I need all of the people who work with me and even any friends to know that if I'm sharing something like that with them, that I'm only trying to share what's for the highest good for me, for them, and to never put them down or make them feel like they're not enough. That's just something that I could never even do to my worst enemy. Like, I just don't have that in me. I really care about seeing people for who they are and how wonderful them as themselves are. So, it's interesting because looking at that, as a failure, where I failed in that conversation, and also there was probably part of me that couldn't receive the criticism in return about the criticism that I gave because she was so defensive that I just didn't believe her. I couldn't see it because I was just reading all of her defensiveness and there was no understanding there. So, I guess all of this just to say that criticism is one giant can of worms. And it is complicated. It is complicated because it's important. It's complicated because we are vulnerable people. It's complicated because a lot of the times the criticism comes in the places that we do need to hear it. But if we're not told it in the right way, how can we really receive it? And I think for me personally, I think I need to think about ways that I can be a little bit more vulnerable in asking for criticism, but also be a little bit tougher in receiving the criticism, right? So that's something that I don't have answers on right now, but something that I'm definitely going to be thinking about. So I hope that my little brainstorming session about criticism, my thoughts on criticism, hopefully that was that resonated with a bit from within you. And maybe if you can relate to that, drop me a comment, shoot me an email, or say something on either comments on the blog post. Since it's going to be live on Thursday, you can just go to that new blog post for this episode and drop a comment. Or Patreon members, you guys can comment right from the Patreon page. I would love to know what you think. Yeah, I think that's it for today, you guys. I've got myself Love and Relationships Affirmators deck. Let's go ahead and do this card drawing and then wrap up today's episode. So maybe this card will be something for us when it comes to criticism. Okay, we've got perspective. What does a hawk see when it flies over your house, besides that family of mice living nearby that you don't know about? What will your current problems, conflicts, complaints look like when you're 80 years old and you gaze back on the timeline of your life? In this moment, you are being given the gift of clear perspective, of knowing that in the end, everything is going to be probably much better than okay. Think large enough, and even big issues become small. Become an 80-year-old hawk, and you're really on to something. I love that, and it is a bonus card in the deck. And that's interesting with criticism, right? Because that's one thing that I just admire so much about Dave right now. He's so motivated and he's so thirsty for the criticism. And even though, in the past I've seen him a little bit more defensive, probably because it's coming from me. With your partners, you don't want that. You just want somebody who's supportive. And I need to do a better job at remembering that. But he's thirsty for this information from his group because he wants to get better. He knows he's that 80-year-old hawk right now, knowing like, hey, if I'm not told what I'm doing wrong now, I can't get to where I want to go. And I guess that's what I need to remember too, is not feeling like a failure in this moment, but remembering that it's for the better, right? What we choose, what we know is true, and what is for our highest good, and that is actually helpful for us. If we can allow ourselves to think about and consider those things and turn them around for our best, that is criticism we need. So, all right, you guys, that is it for this week. Promise me that you will drop by my website at the end of this week, abitfromwithin.com. Sign up for the newsletter, check out the standalone guides. I'm really, really proud of the full moon and new moon guides, and Patreon members, these ones are different. So everything else you have access to, like all the guides and the yoga classes, all of those are things that are already available content on the Patreon page. But those guides, specifically the new moon and the full moon, those are brand new content, and I think they turned out really, really well. So I'm going to be running some kind of sale, so I'll be posting about that on Instagram, and I would just love all the hype and everything. So I really appreciate you guys all supporting this this really cool endeavor that I'm really proud of, and I'm so grateful for you tuning in today. So until next time, you guys, take really good care of yourself. Think outside of the box, tap into that Aquarius energy, have fun, honor yourself, and we'll talk to you soon.